That's what I thought was dropping. So it's not holding pressure. So I have a suspicion. Here's my problem. And there just came out some fuel from the pressure regulator. Okay, take a quick look at a spark plug here. Oh yeah. Now these are brand new basically. Very rich, getting way too much fuel. Hey guys, since I'm waiting on parts that I've ordered to hopefully get the car fixed, I thought I'd go ahead and tear apart the regulator that seemed to be leaking, see what I could find. I did have this clamped down because there is a spring in there, spring loaded, so I didn't want it to go flying off in my face. But I got all this Allen screws out and got this thing tore apart. I don't know anything about the inside of a fuel pressure regulator, but I do know the diaphragm is what usually is the problem if there is one. And sure enough, I can see just kind of a bulge right here, and it does appear to have worn through and caused a rip there. And if I get in between the two layers, you can definitely see that thing's ripping through. So I don't know what caused it, whether it's been that way for a long time or it just recently happened when I noticed a problem. I'm not really sure. Probably wore through over time, but yeah. So it looks like definitely this is an issue. Whether it's the problem I'm chasing, we won't know, but it definitely needed fixed. All right, so we got here's my new fuel pressure regulator. Pretty easy install, three bolts on the bottom. Worst part is just taking the upper intake off to get to it and loosening the fuel rails. I know there's some people say you can do it, but I don't have the patience, and I don't like to be bent over under the hood of this thing for that long trying to fiddle with it and probably losing a bolt. So probably faster for me in the long run, just took the fuel rail bolts off to be able to lift it up a little, and then took the intake off. Made that a snap. Went ahead and moved my gauge over to this regulator now since it has a port for it. And I used to have it down here on that Schrader valve on the fuel line, but this will make it easier to see. So pretty straightforward install, and button this back up. The day, let's see what happens. Go see what the fuel pressure looks like. So the fuel pressure regulator seemed to be working. It was about 36 pounds. I unhooked the vacuum, it jumped up to 40. No gas came out. I put it back on, it went back to 36. Gave it a little rev, and it would drop a little bit, which I think is normal. It should lose pressure as you give it more gas. I'm gonna let it idle a little bit longer and then shut it off and see if it'll restart. All right, I've got it up to temperature, so let's shut her off. And if you've been following along on the first video, you'll know that at this point it was idling good, revved up good, started first try. Everything's great on the first start of the day. So that was not the fix. Well, I guess next up is to try to change this brand new TFI on this brand new distributor with a different TFI and see if that's the problem. I made my white paint mark down there on the distributor and the block so I can get it lined exactly back up where it was. And that'll make it so I don't have to worry about messing with timing right away. So I'm just gonna take this 1/2 inch socket here, break the hold down bolt loose. All right, I had to loosen my cap in order to rotate it enough. The great thing about the new distributor and the new TFI is it came with Phillips screws instead of those special tool required bolts that come factory. So makes this a lot quicker. And I'll just grab these bolts real quick with the magnet. Drop this thing down and let's go get a new one. And I've got this Motorcraft TFI as a spare, and I've got some of this I think it's Arctic silver. I've heard it's real good stuff, a lot better than just dielectric grease or something like that. That's not what you should use. This is for computer heat sinks, I think. So I'm going to put some of that on, get this thing installed. All right, you can definitely get a couple uses out of one of those little tubes, and I got them on Amazon. So in case anybody wants some, that's where you can get it, Arctic silver. All right, all buttoned up, tightened down, marks lined up. Let's see what. Yep. Next thing on the list, I'm going to get this air intake tube off the throttle body and plug that up with some plastic, and we're going to do a smoke test and see if we have a vacuum leak somewhere. So let's do a leak check on the vacuum system here. I've got one of these smoke machines off eBay. I've had it hooked up to the battery for about 5 minutes, a little longer than I need to. Just got it hot and generating smoke. I've got the line going into the main vacuum tube that comes out of the intake. So I just unhooked it from the vacuum tree there on the firewall. So it'll go into the intake and all in through these hoses. I'm gonna hook it up to the air now. I'm not gonna use my bigger tank. I've just got this little portable thing filled up to about 40 PSI in the tank, and got the pressure turned down. It only takes like 3 PSI on this regulator. So we'll plug this in and just start waiting, see if we find any smoke coming out anywhere. Be right back. All right, we just plugged it in. You can see the pressure's already made it through to the throttle body. I got my glove that I zip tied there to block it off. It's popped out, so it's just a matter of grab a flashlight here and start looking for smoke. You can hear this little can gurgling. It does get very hot, so you don't want to pick it up while you're using it here. Well, I'll keep looking and let you know what I find. Well, I've been watching this thing for about 10 minutes now, off and on. Got a little bit of smoke coming out of the can itself, so you got to make sure you pay attention to that. The only thing I found is on this bolt right here. Every now and then I'll get a little puff out from under there, so I doubt that that's a big deal. And then down in the throttle body, I've had some coming out from here, but I think it's around the glove. But it's, yeah, so There's a little bit of smoke right there coming from around the glove. That's all I found, so I don't think this is my issue, but I'll snug that bolt down just a little bit. Next thing on the list, we're gonna take the air charge temperature sensor out, take a look at it. I've had a lot of people comment from my first video that they thought that might be the issue. So we're gonna take that out, see what it looks like. Here it is. Initially it doesn't look too bad. I did wipe it off some before I started recording. Shouldn't have done that, but it looked kind of dirty and wet. Went maybe with the fuel pressure regulator issue that I did have. I was getting too much gas on this thing in the air in there, and since it was going in through the vacuum line into the intake, who knows, maybe that ate away at it over time or did something to it. So went ahead and picked up a new one. It looks pretty much the same, other than it's got a focus here. It's got a blue tip on it instead of green, but maybe the fuel turned it green or the heat turned it green. It's hard to say. My camera does not want to focus on it, but anyway, we'll see what happens. Unless the air charge temperature sensor has been the fix, I don't expect it's going to want to start very well. So as you just saw, after putting a different regulator on, swapping out TFI, changing the air charge temperature sensor, I stumbled across to when you turn the car off, the fuel pressure drops very quickly. I think the fuel pressure is going down way too fast for it to be a leaking injector anyway. Looks like maybe it's the fuel pump, but doesn't really make sense to me since it's only 3 years old, but you never know. If you guys have any other thoughts, I know a few people mentioned EGR. I don't have any EGR stuff left on the car. That's been taken off years ago, so that would not be the culprit here for the no start after it's warm. But if you got other ideas, I really don't want to take the gas tank out again if I don't have to. I'm curious if you guys can explain why, if it is the fuel pump letting fuel go back into the tank as soon as you shut the car off, why would the first start of the day start up just fine, but after running for 5 minutes, then it doesn't want to start anymore? It just cranks. But once you do get it started, then it'll run okay again. So I don't know, it's just not quite working out in my head as to if the fuel pump is the problem or not. Let me know what you think.